It's car con carne. Let's eat in the car. It's car con carne. And now here's the star of our show, James Van Alstyne.
Yes.
This right here is Car con Carne. It's a Q101 podcast. I'm James Van Alstyne, and Car con Carne is lovingly rendered by our friends at Easy Automation, easy-automation.net. Transform your living space with cutting-edge home automation. Experience seamless control over audio, video, lighting, climate, security, and more. Embrace the future of smart living. It's your home, your rules, motherfucker. Get a quote by visiting easy-automation.net or give my guy Dan a call at 630-730-3728. Couldn't do that on the radio, could you, Jeff Schwartz?
Not anymore. Not ever.
Not ever.
But you could do it on Sirius XM.
Fair point. Jeff Schwartz used to be heavily involved with radio. We'll get to that. The flip side, Where Chicago Rocked. WhereChicagoRocked.com is an oral history of one of the greatest record stores in Chicago history. My friend Tony on Goodreads reviewed the book, and I'm going to read his review before I introduce you guys. An excellent oral history of one of the greatest record stores in Chicago's history. Full of great stories and tons of humor, the Rosenbaum brothers were immensely instrumental in promoting bands and their shows. Many of their business ideas became commonplace around the country. I'm so glad this book was published because their impact on bands, concerts, and fans has been severely underrated. The authors, the Rosenbaums, Carl and Larry, are not here, but they sent their proxies to talk about Chicago's legendary record store.
And I still haven't been paid, Carl or Larry.
To my right, he did marketing for the store and the concerts. He was even turned into a caricature in the name of branding. He is Mr. Cheap. He is Jeff Schwartz.
Right, you are, James. That's
also,
Mr. Cheap talked.
Nothing less than a Chicago industry legend, radio industry legend. In the backseat, we have the man who co-authored The Flip Side, Where Chicago Rocked. He is Ken Churilla, who worked with the Rosenbaums on putting this story onto the page. Let's start there, Ken Churilla. Oh, we're at Scooby's in Downers Grove, by the way. That's a Jeff Schwartz favorite.
Right. And do you want your hot dogs or not yet?
Give it a second.
Okay.
Ken, we're going to start with you since you co-authored this book. Why did this story have to be told?
You know, it's well, from a Chicago standpoint, it's one of the greatest record stores and record store chains that was around at the time when rock and roll was exploding in the 70s, 80s, all the way through the 90s. And they brought in along so many things that record stores around the world, around the country, adapted. You know, you went there to buy your concert tickets. We camped out. How many times did we all camp out for concert tickets? Spent the night meeting people waiting for Van Halen to go on sale, or Guns N' Roses, or Smashing Pumpkins, or whoever it was. You know, there was so many things. The concert T-shirts that you'd go there and buy, the posters that were on your wall. Just hanging out at record stores and learning about music and meeting people, and you know, everything started with Flipside, not necessarily intentionally, but it did, and it's just a great story for Chicago people, but just record store people in general. That whole generation or two generations of people that grew up going to record stores and learning to love music.
The Lincoln Village was my location.
Okay.
That was my flip side. Just because when you're a kid, you're kind of bounded by your geography.
Right.
And that was my area.
Are.
Fair enough.
You don't buy a car.
We're at a restaurant right by your house. Yeah,
right.
That's true.
You go to a car dealer by your house.
True. All right, so we're at Scooby's. Jeff Schwartz, who, as I mentioned, a radio giant, a titan.
Yeah.
Has anyone asked you this week about Disco Demolition? Do you go a week with
not yet, because it's the winter. It
Right.
starts again. You know, I still to this day send Steve a note every anniversary. Happy disco anniversary. Soon to be 50, which scares the daylights out of me.
That's crazy.
Yeah, really crazy when you look at what's transpired. But 50 years, I think July will be 46 or 47.
Amazing. So we're at Scooby's. Jeff swears by the fries. He says they're the best.
Second best.
Second
I
best
did
behind
say
Gene
it.
and Jude's. Yes.
Gene and Jude's is still the best. I'm a Chicagoan. Do I have the accent of a Chicagoan?
You have the accent of an aging Chicago mensch.
You know, I have to tell you, and thank you for inviting us to this, James. Ken slaved for over 2 years in writing this book. people nowadays, and I know you want to get into it, but record stores were a lifestyle. Some
For sure.
people would go to the mall. Some people would go to movie theaters. Going to a record store, I still remember the first time I went, it wasn't a flip side. I went to a record store in Skokie. It was Auto Sound. I don't know if you remember it.
No, the only ones I remember in Skokie are Record City and Merlin's Magic Music, which was also a head shop, and that's where I
Right.
bought Kiss Alive too.
And there's a great part in the book, the flip side book, about them having a head shop. And then having the Supreme Court sort of get mad at you.
But you bring up a great point. Record stores were were places that fostered community. Like as a kid, I would go to the record store. I'd thumb through the bins. I'd maybe walk out with a $5 record because that was all I could afford back then. But it was just you're hearing the music that's being played over the house system. You're looking at stuff. People are like communicating with one another. It was definitely a way to for misfits to come together.
We used to go to record stores and just stand there and listen.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, turn
And
me on to something.
I remember
Yeah.
I went to this record store and the guy says to me, "You got to hear this new band." He's getting ready to put it on the turntable, and he said, "It's a great guy from London called Ted Zeppelin." You think Ted Zeppelin made it in the music industry?
Ed Zeppelin did, but that was more of a loop thing, wasn't it?
Kevin would vouch for that.
It all comes
But
back to that.
It was a phenomenal time what the Rosenbaum brothers did, and then kept on overlapping stuff, and they went almost accidentally into the ticket business with Ticketron, and their business quadrupled immediately. It was amazing.
It's interesting because the book almost takes two different story paths. There's the record store path, and then you kind of focus on the concert business aspect of it. You don't cross streams necessarily in your narrative.
No.
Which tell me about that choice, Ken.
Well, they were two separate entities. They were same people, but two separate entities. And one fed the other, in both directions. But they were separate entities. And they got into it by accident. I mean, they were, they had the idea to start selling records at the Kinetic Playground during concerts on Fridays and Saturday nights,
Which was uptown Lawrence Avenue.
Yeah,
It was just their idea. They were two men that had a vision. In the book, I think Ken wrote about it, that they had money, they got tired of working for people, and they had three ideas: record store, dry cleaner, or a hot dog stand. They chose a record store.
And they were lucky to come along at a time when there was no internet,
Right.
There was no manual on how to do this. They were part of that whole wave of record stores that were just starting up, so that nobody knew what to do. Everyone was throwing stuff against the wall. They were two really creative guys. They met Jeff, who is Mr. Creative, and it just different things fed each other, and then one foot in front of the other, and before you know it, they go from one small record store on Foster Avenue to putting on 4 sold-out shows, 80,000 people, general admission, if you can believe that, every one of them at Soldier Field. And those concerts started. They were day concerts. They weren't. They didn't turn on lights at that point. For
And
the
I'm
most
sure
part.
you went to a few of them.
And so, I mean, you
I would
think
kill
about,
for daytime concerts.
Right?
Can
Now
we bring
we
that back? I'm not
Well,
getting any
first
younger.
of all, I do think that all cover bands of the Doobie Brothers and everybody else, they should do daytime concerts for elderly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I want
5:30
to go
start
to
time.
sleep. Like, this is how much I love you. Right now, I'd probably be home getting ready for bed.
Let's break open the hot dogs, Jeff Schwartz, radio legend.
I'll be the one.
Mr. Cheap.
Okay, hold on.
When did you come on board? How soon, or how long after Flipside started their empire? How long did it take for you to come on board with them?
I don't really remember, but that's my age more than anything. I don't remember, but the great thing about Carl and Larry, we became friends. I was selling them radio airtime, and we became friends.
What station were you selling?
At that time, it was at WDAI, which the funny thing about DAI, it stood for, supposedly when ABC did it, ABC owned 2 rock stations back then, WDAI in Chicago and the RIF, WRIF in
Detroit, which is still there.
Yes, and DAI, the call letters got screwed up in the transmission because DAI was supposed to be in Detroit. It was stand for Detroit Automotive Industry. Okay, who got this, James?
Is that a Chicago dog? Char
That
dog?
looks like
Yeah.
everything on it.
Yeah, that's me. Sport peppers.
Okay, and this is Ken's because Ken ordered.
Jeff,
all
did you
of
not
it.
get anything?
I got it right here.
Okay.
I only got a hot dog. Remember, before you got here, I ate my fry.
All right, I'm going to show this off because this is. I trust Jeff Schwartz. This is a
I
man
know
who-
hot dogs.
You know food. You've been around the block a few times.
I've been in Chicago for way too many years.
Awesome. What do you get, Ken? You got a modified version of Chicago dog?
I just got basically plain hot dogs.
And I got mustard only. Okay, while you're trying to eat this, I'm going to tell you a funny hot dog story. That's
why I came to Downers Grove.
My wife and I are going to see my parents, and one day
okay.
they're both gone, not because of the story or the hot dogs. And we stop at a place in Niles, Illinois, and
Home
it's
of
a
Gulf Mill Mall.
I can't remember what it's called, but we order the hot dogs, and my wife gets everything. I mean, she's a little girl, but everything. I don't even know how she can do it. And we get to go to pay for it, and the lady at the counter says, "Don't worry, sir, it's already been taken care of." And I looked to Sue, and I said, "Taken care of what?" And behind the counter making the hot dogs is a guy that was our exterminator.
Oh, my God.
I get out, I take the food, and I throw it in the garbage can.
That's
I'm
the
not
side
eating-
hustle?
I don't know how much he washed his hands.
I know where those hands have been. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. And he's been saving me from red. Okay, we got to get back because, I'm being paid a lot of money by Flipside to promote this.
So one of the guys is still local, right, Ken? One of
Yes,
the brothers?
Larry still lives in town. Carl is now out in Scottsdale, Arizona. Carl was the smart one.
Carl was during the last week, especially when it was sub-zero wind chill. Yeah, he's looking pretty smart.
We were getting texts from him reminding us how nice it was in Scottsdale.
I'm jumping around, and it was a given the second I agreed to have Jeff Schwartz in the car. There's so many fascinating. I love behind-the-scenes stories, and that's what this is. This is a behind-the-scenes story of the building of a record company chain, the record company chain in Chicago. But like all the details about the mafia, I found super interesting. Like
No, you don't.
no, I don't.
No, you
We don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know what you're talking about, and I don't want to talk about.
There were times that the gentleman in question, we'll call him, would say to them, hey, I saw your son riding his bicycle and on his red Schwinn the other day down whatever street, just to let them know that
They're watching.
they
and
were
know.
there and they knew exactly.
It's chilling.
And
Yeah.
by the way, it's the same thing that you always see on TV.
I was going to say it's like straight out of a movie.
All the
Straight out of a
episodes,
movie.
It is true. They lived what is true. It had to be a horrific time, but it set their business. Think about it, James. And I say, no longer did you have to go because of Ticketron and Flipside. No longer did you have to go in the Sears washer and dryer department to go buy your tickets. And yes, to those listening, I'm not making a joke.
Yeah, right. That was the thing.
That's where Ticketron was, in Sears.
It was in the major department stores, in the customer service,
Right.
around the around the appliances and things. And Sears, when they signed up, there's no way they thought they were going to get in a bunch of long hairs coming in for a Ted Nugent concert or Boston coming to town. They were thinking they were going to be selling tickets for Conway Twitty or whatever the equivalent of Disney Stars on Ice would have been back then.
Can we agree, speaking of Ted Nugent, regardless of what he's done publicly and said, Great White Buffalo from Double Live Gonzo is still a jam. Can we agree?
If you can separate Ted Ted the musician from Ted the man,
See, that's the tricky part. I mean,
It's hard.
There are so many musicians throughout history where you're like, oh, that was some bad shit. Can I listen to this? Like Jerry Lee Lewis, objectively not a good dude.
right? But could write a song.
And could play the
and
piano.
could play the piano. Yeah, and that holds true today. That holds
Marilyn
true today.
Manson, probably not a good guy from everything I read, but damn it all, I love beautiful people.
Right.
And disposable teens. Yeah. So it's a slippery slope. One of the things I mentioned my friend Tony's Goodreads review. He talked about practices that started then that still exist today. These guys really were on the forefront of the idea of selling merch, band merch.
Yes,
That
they
was
were
a
the
big
first
deal.
ones to do rock T-shirts in their stores, and
I guess someone had to be first, but I found that amazing.
you do find it amazing, but every step there's always something new. I mean, they did, Ken and I still amazed at it. Probably my favorite promotion of all time, yes, even more than Disco Demolition, was the Who Live.
Which was in movie theaters.
And nobody ever did it, and nobody still does it. I mean, I don't understand. And it worked, and it was great. If you want a great behind-the-scenes story, James, you'll love this.
Of course.
So we have the idea. I'm working with a movie company chain, M&R Amusement Company. They were all for it. They had about 11 theaters in the Chicagoland area.
All for it, meaning showing a live Who concert on multiple screens throughout Chicago.
Yes.
Which today would be called streaming.
Yes.
But in 74?
It had to be 79 or 80.
So that would be the Who Are You tour, or Face Dances was 80.
I think it was Who Are You, but the funny thing is, after all was said, where our music director, Sky Daniels, talked to Bill Kerbishley, who is the Who's manager, myself, Mitch Michaels, a name, well known, and our general manager, Mitch was the program director then, and our general manager, Les Elias, we had to fly to Detroit to meet with Townsend and Kerbishley.
Oh my God.
And they were playing they usually do their first 3 or 4 shows of a national tour in small arenas. So if they screw up, how mad can you be? You're seeing the Who in a 2,000 seat arena. And we were at the Detroit Masonic Temple, I think it was. So we're sitting there and we're waiting. We're talking to Kerbishley, the Who manager, and we hear a ton of arguing in the hallway. And Bill said, "Oh, the show must be over." And Pete and Roger Townsend and Daltrey are having probably a very nice conversation now. Excuse me, let me go out. So the door opens, you hear the yelling louder, then finally Townsend walks in, and Townsend goes, that was just us. Love taps, fuck him. And he sits down at his dressing table, and he goes, "Do you blokes, yes, blokes, get high?" And so Les Elias, our general manager, because it's a business meeting, says no. Mitch, for whatever reason, said no. I said, "Do I get high?" He took out, honestly, James, it had to be the size of a tire iron. And I had to go through and finish all. I'm not going to say when Pete Townsend passes me a joint, I'm not
close
going
the
to
deal.
say,
That's
"No,
how
thank
you
I've
close the
had
deal.
enough."
You don't stand on ceremony. That's how you close the deal with Pete Townsend.
But it was just a tremendous time. Record store. I'm getting excited about record stores now.
Which is awesome. And by the way, the conclusion to that Who story is you did get high with Pete, but afterward you swore that you would never do that again, and that was the end of it.
Okay, it was the end of it. I never got high with another member of the Who ever again. I don't think I ever got stoned with any other performer. But, it was very sad. I remember one time I met Paul McCartney when he was married to, what was her name?
Linda
McCartney. And I was married to him. And I was introduced, this is Jeff Schwartz, Paul McCartney. I said, "Mr. McCarthy, I have to tell you, I love your music." I'm walking away saying he is making so much fun of me right now that guy told me he loved my music. So I carry all this through my life. And he's made fun of me. Oh, what's wrong with me?
So everything's right. But the Who concert, really cool idea. I mean, that's, again, going back to this notion of creating community. That's a way to do it. I mean, you kind of figured it out. You kind of cracked the code.
I think I cracked it. We were the first ones that ever put somebody else's logo on a bag. I did it because I was also representing M&R Amusement Company, the movie theater chain that we did a movie with, and I put logos on the popcorn cups. Even though one day I realized I'm at the movie and all the popcorn cups are on the counter, but they're all inserted into another popcorn cup into another, so the logos are all upside down.
That's hilarious. But when people are sitting there, I mean, they take it to their seats and you're reinforcing the brand. This is brand identity.
I learned that from the simplest thing of all is auto racing.
Yes.
Auto racing. I'm still waiting for I still believe that within the next 3 to 5 years, high schools will have logos on their uniforms and helmets. I still believe that high schools will soon join NIL, because where do these players in college come from? They come from high school.
Yeah.
I still believe all of that will happen. And the one thing Carl and Larry did for me and for this book, they let me do. It's easy to be a hero when you're allowed to throw 100 things at a bullseye. One might hit.
Well, I mean, the thing is, there was no roadmap for a lot of what you did.
No.
So they gave you the birth to take chances and fuck shit up.
But
You were allowed
back
to be
then,
creative.
you know what? It's so funny to say back then it was hard to fuck things up because there were so many avenues to do it the right way because nobody had ever done it
Right.
before. And it made it, there wasn't anything that wasn't commercialized.
One of the things that Flipside did famously, and it's talked about in this book, again, The Flipside Where Chicago Rocked, co-author Ken Churilla is in the back seat, talking about in-stores, bringing artists.
Right.
That was just part of the promotional calendar for these big artists, from Debbie Boone through Styx, etc. I mean, Jeff, you were there. Talk about some of these moments.
The scariest one, we had these in-stores, the record companies were great back there, but we had all these in-stores, and Carl and Larry, we would need security, so they would bring their concert security guys.
Yeah.
And usually 9 out of 10 of them were ex-Chicago cops.
Right.
And the funniest one of all was we had Debbie Boone, which really is our biggest in-store of all time, and seeing our security deal with these screaming little girls. You think Taylor Swift had little girls? Debbie Boone really knew how to draw them. They were amazing. The groups knew. The good group, Boston was a great group. One of the greatest in-stores we ever had was, yes, Rick Wakeman is still personal friends with Carl Rosenbaum.
That's so cool.
The record companies got it back then, and they knew how to do it. And once again, Carl just would do anything that they would want. They had in-stores. I don't know if you saw the picture in the in-store contest, display contest. Did you see the picture in the book of the ELO van
which
that
they
they
won.
won?
Yeah.
Which is amazing.
Right? I mean, you're driving around with an airbrushed ELO van, and that was the prize for record stores. For them
Could
to
that
win.
be any more 1970s, by the way?
Right? Yeah, it was either that or Star Wars, right?
Yeah. Or like a Frank Frazetta warrior with a broadsword. So the in-stores were a big deal. And what you didn't mention about Debbie Boone, in order to seal the deal, to get Debbie Boone to show up, you met with her and the manager beforehand. They put out this gigantic joint, and you got high with Debbie Boone and closed.
But she wasn't a
And
member of
her
the Who,
father
so his
was
statement
with her
stands.
pet, and we started singing Blue Suede Shoes or whatever it was. No, I knew the right time to do it. There's an old joke, and it's a cartoon picture of Albert Einstein, which so many people always correlate me to because of my mustache and my wild, crazy hair.
And your genius.
So,
And
at
your
the-
grasp of physics.
At the end of the day, the Einstein cartoon says, will anybody know you're high if you're always high? And that's my philosophy in life. Will anybody know I'm high if I'm always high? You should see me. There's a reason why I'm every niece and nephew's favorite uncle.
Now, for you kids watching, enjoy things in moderation.
I don't talk about that.
Okay. The concert business. You can't talk. We talked a little bit about it. You can't talk about Flipside without talking about the concert business. It just kind of started, and then it really just exploded quickly, didn't it?
The time was right there right, Ken? I mean,
Yes.
At the end of the day, Ken talked about timing before. It was right there. Don't forget, everything has to have a starting point in life. Marconi made the radio, whatever the case may be. It was there for the taking.
Yeah.
And Carl and Larry, don't forget, no matter how good you are, you still have to have an element of luck.
Yeah.
And how many people say I'd rather be lucky than good, or how many people say I'd rather be lucky than good, and if I can be good 9 out of 10 times, I'm going to win every one. And they were right place, right time, but they had the right mindset to do it. I'm telling you, it's not trying. I don't get a penny off of a book sale. I just love the whole thing. And Ken wrote a fascinating, quick read detail. This is not a book that if anybody purchases, this is not a book that's going to take you a week and a half to read.
No.
This is if you
And there are lots of pictures, too.
If you went to a Mexican restaurant and had dinner, you could finish it on one toilet sitting. I mean, because in reality, I don't like to read, and I read the whole thing.
There's a blurb.
At least
There's a
to be
blurb
fair,
for the
talked
reprint.
about me.
You know, you talk about the concert part though, and there's so many stories about it. But in true rock and roll fashion, their first concert partner that stiffed them on some bills pays them back with a Rolls Royce in New York, but says, "I'll tell you where it's at. I'll leave the keys in the glove box.
What a wild story!
You got to come and get it."
And so, famous concert promoter, and the picture of the cars and the.
So they send one of their guys that works for them in the record store, like, "Hey, we're going to put you on a plane," and his request is, "Can my girlfriend come?" Yeah, we'll send her too, down out in the bowels of the Brooklyn to go get this Rolls Royce parked in a garage somewhere. Who knows what's going to happen?
Again, different era. Like some of these stories, you can't imagine translating to the modern day.
Right.
You just can't.
Yeah.
And this is like classic Chicago. I love Chicago history stuff. This is very much a Chicago history book. Flipside went away in what year, Ken?
94 was their final year when they finally closed the doors.
Why did they close the doors?
The timing of it all, you know, as the big
Best
boxes
Buys.
came up, the Best Buys and the Circuit Cities and whatnot.
Even back then, Polk Brothers.
Really?
EJ Corvettes, they had big record departments. And the big boys just eventually put the little boy, the mom and pa's, out of business. There were really two big ones in Chicago, Flipside and Rose.
Right.
And then there were a bunch of little ones, Jay Chiletti's, Rainbow Records, Max Tuxton's Here, which was a great 3-store chain, and other ones. But how do you compete with the big boys? How do you compete?
Well, and that's just it. I mean, those big boys, when the Best Buys came around, they were selling all music as loss leaders.
Yes.
They were selling for way less than any of these independent chains could ever afford, and they crushed them.
But I could also tell you that those big full-page ads they would take out in the Tribune with 45 albums. Every record company paid for the entire full page.
Of course.
So the entire ad was like a 44-album profit margin. I mean, it just amazing. Just amazing.
I remember as a
that's
kid
what
getting
really ended it. And Carl actually stayed in the music industry for how long, Ken? 10 more years?
He stayed in a number of years after that.
With the cassettes, with the
one-hit
he actually
cassettes.
with the
Top
Walgreens.
Hits, the
Top
company was
Hits.
called Top Hits, and it's what you would see at the counter at a Walgreens or a CVS.
You know, and ironically, though, we talk about how Best Buy, it was the video that killed the radio star in a sense. The person that took over Best Buy's music department stuff here in Chicago came up through the Flipside ranks. So he had left Flipside that they had consolidated to a point he couldn't keep him on anymore. But ultimately they trained the guy that ultimately killed record stores. He got Best Buy to a point where they were, I want to say it was a 25% record margin. One every 4 records sold in the Chicagoland area was sold at one of his Best Buy stores. I mean, the guy was amazing.
People forget about the other one, which I liked better than Best Buy, of course. I chose the underdog. Circuit City.
Yes,
Nobody
of course.
ever talks about Circuit City.
Oh, I do.
love them.
Service was the state of the art there.
Yeah.
Record stores are a thing again. Maybe not in the way that Flipside was back in the day, but you go to Chicago. I mean, you just go through Logan Square, Wicker Park. You're going to hit 5 record stores in 10 minutes.
Well, because vinyl's popularity has regained, because so many of these younger generation realizes vinyl was where it's at.
Well, and that was my question. I mean, what do you think of, or how do you feel knowing that records are having a moment again?
It makes me happy. You know what? Every album, and I do mean 12-inch circular album. Every album was a piece of art.
Truly.
And then it became a rolling board.
Yeah. Oh my God! I was at Valhalla in Oak Park.
Great record store.
Great record store, and I got a copy of the soundtrack to Roadie, the Meatloaf movie from late '70s. Alice Cooper's on it. Opened it up, took it out of the plastic sleeve. Nothing but shake coming out of that record, and it probably sat there since 1979.
Did you try it?
No,
I would have.
But it was the perfect experience to go to that place that has been there forever, buy that record that is textbook 1970s. I think Blondie's on there covering Johnny Cash, and there is someone's weed, to your point, the rolling board from back in the day.
I mean, there was so much living through, and we should talk about this. I don't know how much more time we have, but living through the CD era when every store had to be changed.
Yeah, I bet.
Almost overnight.
Yeah.
Because the record industry said, okay, you have to adopt to us, not you. Not we have to adopt to you.
Right.
And Larry especially, because Carl is like me, we have 10 thumbs, like most Jewish boys do. But Larry, Carl and I used to say, we don't think he's Jewish. He could build everything. And they were building all those racks. And then they had to send back all the LPs and everything else. And the record companies did not give any help.
No, and it is a substantial amount of money to press a record. And
When
CDs are, I mean, the savings are obvious to the record labels.
Right. I mean, and now I don't even know who makes this money. When somebody sells their catalog, like who just sold their catalog?
Everyone just sold their
Well,
catalog.
publishing,
Jeff.
yeah.
The public.
But where does it get sold?
It basically, as I understand
On
it,
your
that could-
downloads for,
well, there's that, and then they could license music for film.
It's in the sync
and
licensing.
commercials.
It's in the sync licensing,
Yeah.
TV,
Yeah.
film, commercials, things like that. But but to Jeff's point with the record stores, Flipside grew. They started as LPs and well first and 45s, then they had to rebuild everything into tapes. First, it was cassette tapes. Then they
the
had
worst possible way to
Well,
listen
it
to
was
music.
8 tracks, by the way.
8
4
tracks,
right? Before 8 tracks, and then 8 tracks before cassette.
and then rebuild again for CDs.
Yeah.
And none of these these record bins could hold anything. There was no quick interchange type of thing. They had to rebuild it every time.
And the labels are laughing all the way to the bank because
All
people
the
are
way.
rebuying the same.
We bought the same
product.
album 4 times.
Yes.
You had it on vinyl, then you had it on
There's
8-track, then
another
you had it on cassette.
cha-ching for Thriller by Michael
Yeah,
Jackson.
or Zeppelin 4, or any of those classic, iconic records. How many Dark Sides of the Moon have been sold?
Those diamond albums that sold 10 million copies. There was really 4 million people that bought it, but we all bought it 3 times.
Exactly. So, Ken, thinking about the brothers who are not here, who are
Now they're still with us.
Right, they're not here in
yeah,
the
just
car.
not like that.
Sorry.
They're here, but they're probably sleeping.
Awkward turn
Which
of
I
phrase.
should be.
And you really become an extended part of their family over the past couple of years, and you know a lot about them. What's their feeling walking away from all this? Looking back,
They're happy with they were glad to be able to get their legacy out there. There are 2 generations in a sense. There's the people that were there and experienced it and can relive it, and it jars so many other memories that weren't in the book. Obviously, you had to put an end to it somewhere. So there's that, and then there's also the people that didn't get to experience that. I kind of feel like I'm 52, and my generation was the
You're so
last
young.
one that grew up with record stores, hanging out in record stores. I worked in a record store. I worked at Woodmar Records in Woodmar Mall in Hammond, Indiana.
Nice.
So I mean, I got it. It's very much, what was it, High Fidelity with Cusack or Empire Records, the movie. It very much was that stuff. But the generation behind us never got that because the
Right.
record industry went and ate itself, and now they're all trying to figure out how to make money when they had it in the palm of their hand.
Everything ends up circular eventually.
That is the truth.
But the guys are happy that their story's out there. And
they
it was a
wanted
great
something
story
for their grandkids.
It was a great story. Accidentally, they stumbled onto a lot of great things that took foothold all across the country. the in-stores, the merch. I mean, it's funny when we were talking about merch, talking about how, because at the time, it was basically bootleg merch. Bands weren't doing merch, so they were the ones making the Van
They
Halen
didn't know the
t-shirt.
opportunity. Yeah.
Right. And you find out they were selling these T-shirts for $4.99 or whatever it is. Taylor Swift comes through town, and she's selling a hoodie for $250.
That's not true.
And selling that's true. And selling out, selling out
I
of
love
everything.
her. I don't care.
God bless her.
I mean, sweetest couple in the world.
If people want to pay it, more
I
power
did
to 'em.
when Devo came to the Riv on that 50th anniversary tour last year. I did buy an $80 hoodie because I'm like, this isn't going to happen again. I love Devo. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, their music still sounds challenging, interesting, and not recorded by human beings. I love their
They
music.
weren't human beings.
No, I think they were.
They were
geniuses.
Devo.
But you are a creative genius, Jeff Schwartz. All right, so here's what I want to do, Jeff Schwartz.
What?
We talked about the book, which, again, The Flip Side, Where Chicago Rocked. You can get it on Amazon, as previously mentioned. We should do this again, just you and me, and let's talk radio.
And we'll kick Ken out.
Well, I mean, Ken's welcome to hang along, but here's the thing. Jeff, we
He worked for me for over 10 years in the radio industry.
big fucking deal. Everyone's worked for you,
Right.
Jeff.
That makes me one of everybody in Chicagoland radio.
Not that long.
But there's so much to get into, and I didn't want to distract from the book, but will you come back and tell radio stories?
I would welcome the opportunity. But let me tell you, the people that I've worked with, when you talk about the music with Flipside and everything else, the people that I worked for shaped our ears.
Yeah.
Be it Steve Dow, Mike North, Kevin Matthews. I had to deal with Howard Stern, not Howard, but Howard Stern's people for years. And it was not easy. It was not easy. That's why I still see a psychiatrist today.
I only have one Mike North moment. It was when I was at XRT after they let Johnny Mars go. It's a whole stupid thing. But I was replacing Johnny at nights at XRT. There was a big staff meeting with the score and XRT in this tiny conference room on 4949 Belmont. And we're waiting, I think, for Norm Weiner to come in because Norm Weiner was never punctual.
Really? I didn't know. Did he talk about dinner with Santana?
And I'll never forget, I'm in this room. I don't know anyone yet. North across the room says, "Hey, Frank," to Frankie Lee, "who's this asshole who's replacing Johnny Mars?"
And I don't think he said it like this.
Yeah.
Hey, John, how this asshole replacing Johnny Mars?
That was it.
I still talk to him every couple of weeks. I talk to Dow. I talk to Kevin. I mean, it's interesting. We all had to let it go, but all of us would take it back in a heartbeat.
It's interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
Isn't it?
You don't realize in the moment. You don't realize.
Here I am, just turned 76, 77. I don't know what I just turned, but I just turned something. And, I still would do it today. I don't think I could.
Well,
Successfully.
not in the current
The
climate.
landscape is a little different than
They'd
yeah.
fire me in a heartbeat
Yeah.
if they haven't already.
But I mean, you bring up a great point, Jeff. You don't realize in the moment like what you're into, what you're onto, and that's true of the flip side experience, and that's certainly true of your radio experience.
It all got lucky. My radio experience started because I was friends with Bob Surratt in kindergarten, and he got me an appointment with my first radio station, and then it lasted for 49 years.
I saw Bob Surratt.
50 so bad.
I saw Surratt at El Woods like 2 weeks ago.
Huh?
I saw Surratt at El Woods.
With Marianne, I'm sure.
He was not. In fact, he said he was on his way to get home to Marianne. I think he was having 2 dinners that night.
We had dinner with him and Marianne a couple of weeks ago at Wildfire in Schaumburg.
So he's making the rounds at all Let Us Entertain
Right,
restaurants.
yeah.
Well, I don't know if he still does ever since the death of who's the guy from Let Us that died?
I only know one guy, and it's Rich Melman.
Is he dead or alive?
I thought he was alive.
I think he's still alive.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know
One
who
of
you're
them
talking
died
about.
in
but yeah.
Hawaii, but whatever. He was an original investor in Elwood's. It was Let Us Entertain You, their company name.
Did not know that.
Yeah.
All right.
So you don't think Bob's going to try to get that Bob Surratt discount? Come on.
Oh yeah, I would work it too. All right, the flip side, Where Chicago Rocked. In the back seat, that is Ken Churilla. He is the co-author of this fantastic book of Chicago history, of music history. If you like Chicago and you like music, you like records, I've got a book for you. It's The Flip Side Where Chicago Rocked. To my right, if you're watching, even if you're listening, it's also true. That is Jeff Schwartz, Mr. Cheap, marketing.
Great cartoon on the back of the book.
Great cartoon on the back of the book.
Wish I still looked like that.
And he'll be coming back.
Thank you.
'Cause
I can't wait. I'll make it easier for you. I'll tell you what. We'll do.
Xanax first.
Well, I do a Xanax every day. Thank you, Donald Trump. We'll do Charlie Beinlich's or Superdog.
Oh, yes. I've never been to Charlie Beinlich's.
You've never been to Charlie Beinlich's?
I always figured I couldn't get in. It's such a tiny place.
It's not that tiny, but you have to go at off hours, or when you get old, off hours become 4 o'clock,
Yeah.
and you eat dinner at 4:30.
Oh, yeah, let's do that.
And the first thing you still see to this day: no shoes, no shirts, no service.
Amen. Amen. Well, guys, thank you for doing this. I love the book, Ken. Thank you for putting this together. I know putting together an oral history of anything takes a long time to do, and I know it's a lot of editing work and a lot of concepting and thinking and deleting and re-adding. It's a lot of work, so congratulations.
And you didn't have to work with Carl and Larry.
I appreciate
even took
it.
myself off the conference calls.
Yes, he did.
I did, but in reality,
I got to go.
because as you know, I talk a lot. And Ken would still be writing the frickin' book if
Right.
it wasn't for me.
That's an important moment of self-awareness and clarity. Then.
Yes,
Yeah.
I finally learned how to have clarity in my life.
We're making strides. All right, guys, thank you so much.
Thanks,
And
James.
Thanks for having us on.
Good luck
Thanks
to
for the Scoobies. Good luck to me? What?
Well, good luck to you.
Okay.
Why not?
Why not?
Are we still recording?
Yeah.
Why?
All right, we're done.